Hey everybody, welcome to Beaming Notes, and today we're going to look at the critical analysis of the poem Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold. Critical analysis. Dover Beach is undoubtedly the most representative of Arnold's poems. In the poem, Arnold laments the decline in faith in God and religion, brought about by the unprecedented growth in science and commerce, giving rise to questions and doubts in the society. The time when Arnold was writing this poem, England was torn between science and religion, materialism and morals, and doubts and beliefs. It was an age that was known as the age of reforms in not only industries and religions but also in politics and society. Darwin and other scientists with their scientific discoveries had made the Victorians question and challenge the existing religious beliefs. Arnold's preoccupation with the significance of a world rich in morals and ethics and the despair that arises from the loss of faith is clearly evident in this poem. Although the poem begins with a descriptive image of harmonious sea, the main theme of the poem is not to romanticize nature, but to reveal the pain, despair, and suffering in the world caused by the lack of religious and spiritual faith. Arnold anticipates the absolute collapse of moral values and harmony in the society. The moon-blanched sand creates a note of melancholy and gloom in the poem. Arnold realizes that even though the sea is calm tonight, its calmness will soon be replaced by violence and discordance. The faith in God and religion is ebbing away, like the waves are ebbing away from the shore. The various sounds expressed by the auditory images in the poem are to some extent suggestive of the screaming of people seeking help to find a way to escape from the chaotic, treacherous world. In this poem, Arnold reveals the malady and struggles of the people. Lack of religious faith has given rise to all sorts of distrust, perverted morality, purposelessness, and vague relationships. In Arnold's view, the society is deceptive and cannot be trusted. The cultural and moral decomposition of the society brings the eternal note of sadness in the lives of people that have become so shallow that the only refuge a man can take is in the love of his beloved. The poem starts with a very peaceful and harmonious note. The serene beauty of the sea is worth admiring. In the moonlight, the French coast with its flickering lights denotes the flickering of faith and religion. Arnold uses a number of metaphors and imagery to convey the melancholic feeling to us. The grating roar of the pebbles is just like the violent screams in a chaotic world. The stress given to the verbs draw back and fling is a classic combination of syntactical and metrical means by which the ebbing and flowing motion of the waves, suggesting the fluctuating faith in God and religion, is made evident. The sea metaphor is used to convey the weakening of faith throughout the poem. The perpetual movements of the waves suggest a deep sense of monotony and despair. The poet realizes the eternal note of sadness in the lives of people in a godless world, and it takes him back to the days of Sophocles, who had made a similar observation about human misery. The literary allusion connects the past to the present, suggesting the bitter truth that human fate has always been subjective to, that the human fate has always been subjected to suffering and misery. The sea of faith has receded, making people vulnerable to a dreary feeling of terror and hopelessness. The deceptive world surrounds the people with an encroaching darkness, making them devoid of any real substance. There is nothing in this hollow world that people can cling to. Arnold feels that the world has transformed itself into a battlefield where the human civilization stands on the verge of moral and ethical extinction. Violence and savagery has replaced unity and happiness. In such a world, Arnold says, only genuine and sincere love can restore faith and spread joy. Written in iambic meter, the poem consists of 37 lines divided into 4 unequal stanzas. The first stanza is the longest with 14 lines. Dover Beach is a dramatic monologue in which the speaker is probably the mouthpiece of the poet and not the poet himself. The phrases bride girdle furled, and withdrawing roar successfully expresses the former glory in religious and spiritual faith and waning of the same. These images created a sense of barrenness pervading the human civilization. Arnold succeeds in the beautification of the language of the poem with the use of a number of figures of speech, starting from metaphor, simile, alliteration, pathetic fallacy, anaphora to assonance. The repetition of the positive attributes of the world suggested by the line, so various, so beautiful, so new, is immediately negated by the revealing the ultimate reality to us where there is no joy, peace, or hope. The poem ends with a violent image of armies clashing, which is in sharp contrast to the tranquil sea image we observe in the opening of the poem, suggesting that the loss of faith will eventually end everything that is worth cherishing in this world. Poetic devices. Metaphor. It is a figure of speech in which a comparison between two different things is implied but not clearly stated. In this poem, faith is compared to sea. Here, high tide is compared to the unbreakable faith that people had in God and religion, and the ebbing of sea waves is compared to the collapsing spiritual and religious faith. The sea of faith that was once in its full tide is now withdrawing, leaving people alone in this dreary, cruel world. Similes. A figure of speech in which a similarity between two different things is clearly stated using the words as or like is called a simile. A beautiful representation of a simile is seen in the way religious and spiritual faith is compared to a girdle furled around the waist of a person, like the folds of a bride girdle furled. Like the girdle, faith also embraced human civilization and protected it from evil aspects of the world. Alliteration. The repetition of consonant sounds in a sentence is called alliteration. It is seen in the lines, "Our love, let us be true, to lie before us like a land of dreams." Allusion. It is a reference to other cultures or works in either prose or poetry. Allusions to mythology, religious epics, sacred texts, and classical literature are the most common. The allusion to the ancient Greek tragedian Sophocles enhances the sense of melancholy and sorrow in the poem. Sophocles heard the sound of the waves of the Aegean Sea that reminded him of the ebb and flow of human misery. Similarly, the speaker in the poem is also distressed by the realization of human suffering. Anaphora. It is a figure of speech in which words or phrases are repeated in the beginning of each sentence, paragraphs, or stanzas in a sequence. The figure of speech is seen in the lines, "So various, so beautiful, so new," and "neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain." Pathetic fallacy. It is a figure of speech in which objects are attributed human emotions. This is observed in the poem when the continuous and endless movement of the sea waves that sucks and flings back pebbles is attributed with an eternal note of sadness that can be experienced by humans. Theme: loss of faith in God and religion. Arnold follows a romantic legacy of pensive melancholy located in the Victorian era of the waning of faith in God and religion and the frustration that follows. The strong religious and spiritual faith of earlier times was beginning to vanish with the advent of science and technology that induced doubts and questions in people's mind. The poem begins with a picturesque description of nature where the sea is calm and quiet, the tide is full, and where the moonlight enhances every corner of this beautiful landscape. The opening lines contain a tone of harmony and peace, which is later contrasted to the cacophonous note of the flickering of faith suggested by the line, "The light gleams and is gone." The land imparting a sense of uncertainty with the flickering light stands for the Victorian ethos marked by oscillations and dubiousness. This weakening of faith in God, brought about predominantly by Darwinism and utilitarianism, is primary theme in the poem. Throughout the poem, Arnold uses several phrases and metaphors to indicate the gloom and despair that comes with the loss of faith. Arnold in this poem bemoans the collapse of a sentimental civilization and the lack of spiritual wisdom that causes the dissipation of mental and moral energy. The rhythmic rise and fall of the waves are indicative of the rise and the fall of human fate, misery, and suffering. The ebbing of water reminds the poet of the ebbing of faith in God and religion. The faith that was once embracing and comforting human civilization is now crumbling, leaving every person on earth despondent. Like a girdle fastened around the waist of a person, the sea of faith had once girdled the world, offering nothing but love and wisdom. This melancholic tone is furthered in the poem as Arnold talks about the long withdrawing roar of spiritual and religious faith. The eroding white cliffs are symbolic of the erosion of human faith and values. Faith is compared to the vast sea which once had a full tide but now is retreating. The continuous and monotonous movements of the waves are suggestive of the endless misery and despair that people find themselves in. Doubts and disbeliefs have left people isolated and sad. The fearful image of despair, emptiness, and moral and cultural decomposition is clearly relevant to the theme of the loss of faith in the poem. Disbeliefs provoke people to fight with each other for existence and live a life of deception where there is no place for joy, peace, or hope. This void caused by lack of faith has left people exposed to the tyranny of its own kind. The eternal note of sadness, also heard by Sophocles, that connects the past with the present, is now brought about by wars and savagery that has not only made the world empty but has also plunged people into unmitigated darkness. Love as a soul's solace. According to the poet, in a world that has lost its true meaning, a world composed of sadness, dullness, and grief, the only alternative to spiritual and religious faith can be true love. The poet laments the fact that loss of faith has left people hopeless and purposeless. In the last paragraph, the poet turns to his beloved for comfort for the pain of the thought of human misery and fate. According to him, only sincere and genuine love can offer some relief to the people living in a treacherous world. Arnold feels that without the love of his beloved, life is futile. In this world where ignorant armies are always ready to clash, only love can restore life's meaning. Arnold thus depicts the ultimate power of love in soothing the soul. The only solace that the poet seeks from his dark, dead world is love. In a world that offers nothing but illusions, in a world that lies and deceives, where there is no place for joy, love, hope, light, peace, and certainty, the comforting arms of the beloved comes to the rescue. The world has become a battlefield where everybody is intrigued by false alarms and made to spread anger, violence, and misery. A kind of darkness pervades the air, preventing people from seeing the beauty in the world. Arnold believes that only true love and compassion can make people restore their faith. Love is like the magic potion that erases all sorrows from our empty, insignificant lives and offers a release from the discordant world of anguish, rivalry, and jealousy. He pleads that the lovers cling to each other to seek comfort in the godless world. The darkling plain is symbolic of the darkness in the cynical and selfish contemporary civilization. Only love can emerge as a guiding light to take people forward in the path of hope and light. Man's endless misery and suffering can be brought to an end by redeeming mankind, and only love is capable of giving a ray of hope to the grief-stricken, vulnerable, and weak beings on the earth. Tone. The predominant mood of despair and gloom pervades throughout the poem. Although the poem begins with an enthralling image of the tranquil sea, Arnold doesn't fail to observe and evoke the eternal note of sadness in human life caused by the waning faith in God and religion. He pictures the turbid ebb and flow of human misery and compares his vision to that of Sophocles, who observed the misery and suffering in human life. This allusion introduces the keynote of a hopeless world taken over by the ravages of war. The sea is compared to faith. Just like the retreating sea, the spiritual and religious faith of human beings is proceeding. Arnold anticipates a collapse of morals, harmony, and peace in a society that has stopped believing. This thought is indicated throughout the poem and is enhanced by the sorrowful expression "ah" towards the end. In this mood of the fearful anticipation, the poet visualizes the world as a dark battlefield where everyone is fighting on confused alarms, leaving no place for hope and love. The auditory images, like grating roar, tremulous cadence, add to the sad, desperate, and hopeless image of the world. They represent the desperate screams of people suffering from pain and misery and a desire to escape. Adding to the mood of lamentation, regret, and sorrow, the poem ends on a frightening note that is in sharp contrast to the harmonious mood created in the beginning of the poem. However, this gloomy mood persisting throughout the poem is made lighter as the poet seeks love and comfort to survive in this cruel world.